Let's be real. Self-trust isn't something that we think about until we realize that we don't have it. And when that happens, life can feel really hard, like you're battling everything around you, including yourself. You doubt your decisions, second guess yourself, and feel stuck in a loop of fear and hesitation. Here's the hard truth. If you don't trust yourself, nothing else in life flows. All the stuff that I talked about earlier this year literally goes out the window. And last month we talked a lot about resistance. And I want to ask you something that you might connect with deeply. Are you resisting trusting yourself? Now, this isn't your fault, by the way. The inability to trust yourself doesn't just magically appear. It's built, or in some cases, it's broken over time. And that's why I created the Resistance Reset Bootcamp. It's an opportunity to help you rebuild self-trust and break free from the patterns holding you back. This is your chance to go deeper. And because this is the beta round, you can join the waitlist now and get 50% off. Find all the details in the description below. But today, I want to get you started right here. In this video, we're going to explore why self-trust is so hard to develop, where it comes from, and how you can rebuild it no matter where you're starting. We'll dive into why your struggles with self-trust might have deeper roots in your childhood, and how neuroscience backs small actions as the key to transformation, and why changing your relationship with yourself can literally transform your life. Sound good? All right, let's just dive deep. Why does self-trust matter? It's believing that you can rely on yourself. It's knowing that no matter what life throws at you, you'll figure it out. But here's where it gets a little tricky. Most of us weren't taught how to trust ourselves. In fact, the way that we approach self-trust starts forming way before we even know how to say the word. There's a psychologist, his name is Eric Erickson. He describes this as the first big lesson of life: trust versus mistrust. When you're a baby, you learn whether the world is safe, whether your needs will be met, and whether you can actually trust the people around you. And if you felt supported and cared for, you probably developed a sense of, I'm okay. The world is okay. I can trust myself. But if life was chaotic, unpredictable, or you didn't feel secure, you may have learned the opposite. Now, fast forward to adulthood. This shows up as second guessing yourself, doubting your abilities, or relying too much on other people's opinions. Now, here's where things get a little more interesting. There's this Hermetic principle. It's called the law of correspondence. It's ancient ancestral wisdom that teaches us that the relationship that you have with yourself mirrors the relationships and experiences you have in the world. So if you don't trust yourself, you'll see that reflected everywhere. Hesitation in your career, chaos in your relationships, indecision about life's big moves. But when you start rebuilding self-trust, the world starts to shift too. Your confidence grows, your relationships deepen, and life begins to flow in ways you didn't expect. So let's go a little deeper. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby, explains that the way that we bond with our caregivers in childhood creates the blueprint for how we see ourselves and others. So essentially, if you had a secure attachment growing up, meaning your caregivers made sure that you felt safe and loved, you likely developed a strong sense of self-trust. And so you believed that you were worthy of care and that you were capable of handling life. But if your caregivers were inconsistent, unavailable, or even critical, you might have developed an insecure attachment. And that can look like this: being afraid to make decisions because you don't trust yourself, seeking constant reassurance from others, constant validation, feeling paralyzed by the fear of failure. But here's the thing: your attachment style isn't a life sentence. Just because it's attachment doesn't mean it needs to stay attached forever. It's just a starting point. And so the beautiful part of this is that with awareness and action, you can rewrite that inner trust blueprint. So for me, trust wasn't something that came natural. Growing up in a Haitian immigrant family, I was taught not to trust anyone. It was literally drilled into me. Keep people at arm's length, don't let your guard down, and always stay on high alert. And add to that, caregivers who, didn't always have the capacity to make me feel safe. And so it's no wonder that trust felt impossible, both in others and in myself. But here's what I've learned. If you don't place yourself in situations where trust is actually required, you never get the chance to practice it. And so that's why I started throwing myself into very uncomfortable situations to challenge these old beliefs. In 2016, I went on my first self-development retreat. Imagine spending an entire weekend in Los Angeles, California with 15 other women you've never met, doing what I would have called woo-woo self-development exercises at the time. It was weird, like legit, and it was uncomfortable, but it was actually extremely eye-opening. I began to see that allowing myself to trust, even just a little bit, actually opened the door to new experiences and powerful growth. It's actually where I met my dear friend Lily, who I co-facilitated plant medicine retreats with. And even later in that year in 2016, I bought a one-way ticket to Thailand. Talk about trust. I had no specific plan. I knew I was going to teach English abroad, but that's how far it went. I had no guarantees, just a deep sense that I needed to take that leap. And every step that I took into the unknown helped me rebuild parts of myself that needed to be healed. And then there were my plant medicine initiations. I've talked about this in the past. These were profound experiences that literally required me to trust deeply, trust in the facilitators, trust in the process, trust in myself, trust in the plants. Let me tell you, sitting in those ceremonies was one of the greatest lessons in self-trust that I've ever had. And you're in the depths of your inner world, confronting fears, wounds, and truths, and you have no choice but to believe that you can handle it. I was confronting fears that I didn't even know that I had, and trusting that some way, somehow, I'd come out on the other side stronger. Now, I'm not telling you to go and do some plant medicine ceremonies. I'm not saying that because it's actually not for everybody. But what I discovered is this. Every time I took a leap of faith, my nervous system rewired itself just a little more. Trust isn't built in your head, okay? It's built in your body through action, and eventually it's fused into your heart space. There's a psychologist, his name is Albert Bandura. His research on self-efficacy shows us a lot. It shows us that confidence comes from taking action, not the other way around. So how do you begin to build self-trust? I have 3 ways that you can begin doing that. To trust yourself, you don't need to overhaul your life overnight. The first, you just need to start small. For example, it could be, let's say you want to, get in the habit of drinking water in the morning, drinking a glass of water when you wake up, spending 5 minutes journaling, taking a 10-minute walk outside. These tiny actions send a message to your brain that says, I can rely on myself. And over time, these small wins builds momentum and create real confidence. And I've said this in previous videos where a lot of people, at least my clients, they don't believe in those small, tiny actions, but that's how self-trust begins. Number 2, here's something that we rarely do. We don't always celebrate ourselves. Neuroscience shows that when you acknowledge your wins, no matter how small, let's not bypass them. They're very, very important. They're crucial. Your brain actually releases dopamine, that feel-good hormone. And this strengthens self-trust and actually keeps you wanting to continue, keeps you motivated. And then the last one, which is what I always usually talk about, is reframing failure. Most of us see failure as proof that we can't trust ourselves. What if it's just feedback? When you view your mistakes as lessons instead of evidence for your shortcomings, you build resilience, you build trust. You start to trust that no matter what happens, you'll learn and you grow. Kind of like what Michael Jordan said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. I'm not a big fan of these words, succeed and all these other things, but it's the idea that self-trust says, this isn't the final verdict on my abilities, but a chance for me to grow. Jordan trusted that every missed shot or every lost game was part of his path to becoming better. Where can you look at your mistakes as part of your path into becoming better? Eventually, the energy shifts and what you're desiring will materialize. And that's real self-trust. It really is about the reframe. Here's the bottom line. We're nearing the end. The relationship that you have with yourself sets the tone for everything in your life. The law of correspondence. It reminds us that as within, so without. When you trust yourself, the world responds. Your confidence grows. Your relationships improve, and you feel more aligned with your purpose or whatever it is that you want to create in this world. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one small promise that you can keep today. Start small, follow through, celebrate it, and share it in the comments what you committed to. And if you're ready to dive deeper into this work, into rebuilding your self-trust and overcoming the resistance, remember to join the waitlist for the Resistance Reset Bootcamp. You'll get 50% off the beta round, but only if you join the waitlist. I'd love to have you on this journey. Details are in the description below. Self-trust isn't built overnight, but it's built one small step at a time. You got this, and I am here to remind you every step of the way. So next week, we're uncovering the hidden patterns behind self-sabotage, why we unknowingly hold ourselves back. More importantly, how to finally break free from that pattern. So don't miss the next transformative deep dive that we're going to get into next week. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this video with someone you think needs to hear this message. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the other side of change.